President Trump is expected to announce his nominee to the Supreme Court on Saturday after the death of late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So who will it be, and will there be enough votes to get the confirmation before the election? We are joined by Congresswoman Elise Stefanik. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to be with you.
So can we take any more before the election? There are so many issues swirling around. I think the largest one at the moment now becomes the Supreme Court.
Clearly, the importance of the Supreme Court is top of voters' minds. Just this last weekend, I was in my district knocking doors, reaching out to voters, and virtually everyone was keyed in on the Supreme Court opening. As an American, we all mourn the loss of Justice Ginsburg. Even if you disagreed with some of her decisions, she was really a towering figure on the court, in the field of law, and particularly for women. She broke so many glass ceilings. So it's a loss for the country. And on Friday, she will be laying in state in the Capitol. So it'll be an honor to be there to bid farewell and send our prayers on behalf of my district. Regarding the Supreme Court opening, I look to the Constitution. The president has the constitutional duty to put forth a name. And the Senate, according to the Constitution, has advise and consent. So I support the president putting forth a name. I think particularly going into an election year, you cannot have a 4-4 court when there are so many pending issues likely to come up with so many absentee and mailed-in ballots across the country. And the Constitution is very clear that the president can put forth a name.
Then 4 years ago, then President Obama had nominated Merrick Garland. The Senate did not hold a confirmation vote, and that was more months ahead of the election than this year. So your thoughts on that? We're in a similar situation going into a presidential election.
Well, we're not in a similar situation in that was a lame duck president, and he did put forth a name, just like President Trump is going to, and the Senate chose not to move forward with the confirmation hearings. That's part of the advise and consent constitutional duty of the Senate. This is very different when you have both a Republican president and a Republican Senate. They are going to move forward with the hearings. Senator McConnell has said that he will move it forward. It looks like they have the votes, but we also have to make sure that this justice, and I really like all the names that have been put out there, the justice is going to go through the process. They will testify before Senate Judiciary and then be held for a vote in committee and on that Senate floor.
Some of the names have been swirling around. They're all women, and I think that's really important because that's an issue that's important to women across the spectrum. No matter what side you're on, women's health care is important. Roe v. Wade has been thrown out there an awful lot about overturning that, and there's been some discussion about whether that's constitutionally possible or whether the funding route is the way to go. And that's one of the issues that both women that have been named have addressed so far.
The nominee is going to get questions on the Senate Judiciary Committee. The American people is going to have an opportunity to hear directly from whoever the president nominates. I think it's important that he is nominating a woman. We want to continue supporting women across all ideological spectrums, and that includes on the court. I want to see a constitutionalist, an originalist who looks at the law as written and doesn't legislate from the bench. And I've been pleased with the names that have been not publicly announced, but have been written about in the press thus far.
Now, Democrats, there's really little they can do to delay or block this from moving forward. So say Joe Biden wins the election. There has been some talk about him wanting to add some positions on the Supreme Court. What are your thoughts about that? Add some justices to it.
I do not support court packing. That is not what we should be pursuing, and it shows how political Democrats are in addressing this. Every Democratic candidate across the country should be asked whether they support court packing or not. And what's also interesting is if you look at the historic precedent, numerous justices, including those on the bench today, their name has been nominated and they've been confirmed in a shorter period of time than between now and the election, including Justice Ginsburg.
The true number of nursing home deaths in New York from COVID-19 has still not officially been released by the state. We're still waiting on numbers. I mean, we're talking months now. What are your thoughts on that process and really getting answers for the victims and their families still? We still have no answers.
They need to release the numbers. They should have done so months ago. This is more concerning aspects of Governor Cuomo's fatal record when it comes to nursing homes. The state has obviously not been forthcoming. They are not counting the deaths of nursing home patients who were transferred to hospitals. So we know the death toll is thousands higher than what has been released to date by the New York Department of Health. And remember, this has been a cover-up by the state. When they put out the initial guidance from the Department of Health, they took that off their website when they started coming under scrutiny. The good news is people had photos of it, they had screenshots, and there needs to be accountability. And there's bipartisan request and really outcry for, A, getting the real data in terms of the number of deaths, but having hearings to ensure that there's accountability. When I talk to families who have lost loved ones in nursing homes in my district and around the state, they want answers, but to a person, each one of them has said the reason why this is important is so this does not happen again.
How do you feel about the state's quarantine list? It keeps growing by the day. I feel like we're adding a lot of states, but we're not taking a lot of states off. And at this point, I feel sort of that we're prisoner to our own state, where we can't go visit loved ones in these other states, where even though their numbers now seem like they're under control, they're still not being removed from New York's quarantine list.
I think as we see the numbers decline and we are getting this under control across the country, obviously testing is up significantly in terms of the individuals getting tested. The fatality rate is very, very low compared to where it was at the height of COVID. I'm concerned about how overreaching our governor has been in New York State. I mean, they're not going through the legislative process on any of this, and I'm concerned with that. And it has impacted individuals who have families, particularly elderly family members, when you have a limited amount of time, limited years left, when you can visit them in other states.
You mentioned going door to door. You're in the middle of a re-election campaign. What other issues are people talking about?
People are talking about law enforcement in my district. I represent not only federal law enforcement on the Border Patrol, but many, many troopers, state investigators, county sheriffs, and city police departments. And they are very concerned about what they're seeing in New York City, in Rochester, and frankly, in the recent horrific shooting in Troy. They are concerned about what Democrats have put forth as policies regarding defunding law enforcement. It's a real clear choice in my district. My opponent, when she was on the county legislature in St. Lawrence County, voted to eliminate a deputy sheriff's position, and also as part of the Democratic county legislature wanting to eliminate highway patrol. I'm hearing a lot about that issue from voters who care very much about safety, security, and that, of course, leads to economic prosperity when you have safe and secure communities. I heard a story from a trooper's spouse who said that the troopers having to park their car hidden behind their garage for fear of being targeted. That's very concerning, and that's not who we are in New York and across America.
You know, we've seen protests in larger cities. We're now seeing in places like Rochester as well. And, you know, it makes me nervous that it will come closer and closer to home. How do we promote the message of equality and anti-racism and still have great respect for our men and women in law enforcement?
Well, there's a big difference between peaceful protests and rioting, looting, and destruction of private property and targeting of law enforcement. We have a constitutional right to peacefully protest in this country. What we do not tolerate in this country is not abiding by the law. And just seeing some of this footage, whether it's the violence against law enforcement officers, whether it's smashing windows and theft from oftentimes first-generation American businesses, that we need to make sure we have rule of law. But I think people support the peaceful right to protest. That's just not what we're seeing in some of these cities.
Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, thank you so much for taking the time this morning.
Thanks.